This portion is going to be on airway obstruction or choking. And as you can see, I'm holding an infant here, perhaps someone who's about 3 months old. It could be a little bit larger. And I want to talk about airway obstruction or choking in a larger context. I think of airway obstruction kind of on a continuum with two endpoints. One endpoint is really what we call gagging. And gagging by itself is more of a normal reflex that we typically see when a baby or a small child is feeding and has some trouble with material, liquid and or semi-solid, moving its way down. The gag reflex is part of the body's response to move things out. In fact, gagging, coughing, and even vomiting are the body's three mechanisms for rapidly moving things out. Once in a while, all three of those will happen in rapid fire succession. Most of the time, when we are breastfeeding or bottle feeding this baby, so we're in a position where they're dependent and we are holding a bottle or the baby is on the breast, if we see gagging, we need to just discontinue for a second, put the bottle or get them off your breast, support their head and neck, and you can sit the baby forward and allow the change in position to really deal with most of this liquid. There's a very small chance that this is going to cause further problems. If you lean the baby forward a little further, that will also perhaps help some of this material that's still in the mouth, liquid in particular, to come out. There's no real benefit to tapping on the baby's back. It's pretty much an option. You can do that, but I wouldn't expect it to really do much. Okay? Now, as we move up the ladder, so to speak, towards this full obstruction, things are getting much more scary. There's no question. This is a frightening event, and we would like to take a look and see what's going on. So what I suggest, and what the American Heart Association suggests, is that if you fear there's something more substantial in the mouth or in the back of the throat, take a look first. And the way to do that is by supporting the baby's head from the back, taking the thumb of your free hand and placing it on the lower jaw, pulling it open, and taking a good look inside. That's a baseline view. That gives us a lot of information. We now know what we're dealing with. If you look in and you see something that appears to be within reach, it is okay for you to take the small finger of your free hand, try the baby finger, go in along the inside of the mouth, on the opposite side if you can, and kind of hook around the item if you can, and either pop it out, or if it's less than fully solid, you might push it to the opposite cheek and then drag it out. Keep in mind that babies in this situation are not sitting here, just in a flaccid kind of a situation. They're usually flailing around a bit. They sense your anxiety and your fear, so they may be moving around with you. So we have to hold them steady and do the best we can. Now, if the item appears that it is in fact too far back, and there's a real problem, and you'll see this in the infant. You'll see, first of all, there'll be very little, if any, sound at all. The further we get towards a full obstruction, the less sound we have. And in the most severe cases, full obstruction will be soundless. Now, if I look in the baby's mouth, and let's say I see maybe just the butt end of a grape that this baby somehow got a hold of, she's not yet capable of eating and swallowing and chewing a grape. So I look in there, I don't know how she got this, but I'm seeing something that does not belong. So I'm going to, with my free hand, support her head and neck. I'm going to turn her over, get her between my legs, and with the heel of this hand, in this case my left hand, I'm going to strike right between the shoulder blades up to 5 times to try and knock this out. It looks pretty much like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If it doesn't come out and there's still evidence that there's an obstruction, basically just turn the baby quickly so she is now facing up, but she's still pointed in a gravity-friendly position. I then go to the spot that we talked about earlier, the CPR spot, which is where the breastbone and the nipple line come together, and push directly down, also up to 5 times, pretty deep, like such. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've done up to 5 back blows. Go back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Flip her over and push. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, one thing that we'd like to add is after you've done a full series of back blows and chest thrusts, that you check the baby's mouth again, because the item may have moved, it may have been repositioned into another location. In some cases, it may be safe to go in and try and get, or you may realize that it's still stuck, in which case we advise you going back over and continuing this cycle, which actually starts, and you can think of it as a loop or a circle. 12 o'clock would be check the airway, do up to 5 back blows, up to 5 chest thrusts, and then check the mouth again. We want you to stay in that loop until the item comes out or the victim becomes lifeless. And as we've discussed before in our previous segment on CPR, all lifeless victims, for any reason, all lifeless victims get CPR. So we would then stop the back blows and chest thrusts and have the baby on her back in this case and immediately start chest compressions. And as you know, that is 30 pumps on the chest followed by an attempt to blow in 2 rescue breaths. So please keep in mind that this process of 5 back blows followed by up to 5 chest thrusts is simply a recommendation for the most that you would do until you can get this thing out. But keep in mind also that if 2 or 3 hits starts to relieve this material, in other words, if I am turning this baby over and I've done some back blows and I see or hear some material, I can immediately go to the mouth and try to scoop that out. So if you get a response where the material starts to come out, immediately stop, do your best to relieve the baby of this material and go from there. It is entirely possible also that this baby may continue to try and cough and even vomit during this event because there's a lot of hyper activity in the back of the throat. But just a reminder, the most back blows or chest thrusts you would do would be 5 on either side. And you can continue that until either the baby is relieved of the item or, in this case, she goes lifeless. It is of critical importance that we remember there's a possibility that you could, in fact, make someone worse who has a partial airway obstruction. And the 2 things that we would like to avoid, number 1, is for you to aggressively go into someone's mouth without having looked first. As you might imagine, this could, and has in some cases, pushed the item further back. We don't want that to happen, so we really want you to get a good look in that mouth before you make a decision as to whether you go in. And if you do go in too far, sometimes you can elicit more gagging and vomiting, and that certainly isn't the goal either. Finally, we do want you to avoid striking the baby or any person with an airway problem. We don't want you to strike them when they are upright, because that could actually cause an item to fall further. And that would be a real significantly bad circumstance, and we don't want to make someone worse at this situation. Hence, that's the reason the gravity position is so important. We get them over and use gravity. I've used that phrase a couple of times, but it's very important that we understand that.